Hi there. I am sitting in front of a window this evening. It's got such great light coming in. It's fantastic. I'm going to get my book. So I thought that I would come on and do an initial video about what I'm reading right now, something I picked up the other day because I'm waiting for the next books in the Anthony Trollope Barsetshire Chronicles series that I'm reading. And I ordered them used. I'm actually ordering those books to own them, which if you know me, you know how much of a library user I am. But I have been collecting those Trollope Barsetshire series books because it's such a phenomenal thing for me to be reading this whole series. Just like in the way that I wanted to own War and Peace. I mean, obviously, I guess I had to own War and Peace because it's taking an entire year to read it, a chapter a day. But at some point, I picked up Middlemarch, beautiful Black Penguin edition, intending to probably read it sometime this year. I don't know why I had it in my mind. I was either going to read Middlemarch by George Eliot or Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. Do I have that right? Two books that are on complete different ends of the spectrum in tone, I believe, from what I know about Wuthering Heights. I did read the first couple chapters of it, and I could tell when I read it, I just wasn't in the mood. I had dipped into this, like the first chapter, a couple months ago, and I really liked the tone. So this all started because I was going to read, I thought I was going to read The Master and Margarita. I got it out of the library. Some Booktube friends of mine are reading it. The lovely Grim Reader and Sarah at Hardcover Hearts, and I wanted to check it out. When I got it and looked at it, it looked like it was like 600 pages long, and I loved the first chapter. But then I was like, you know what? If I'm going to read a 600-page novel, as it turns out, it's not 600 pages, it's like 400 pages. Like, why not pick up something like Middlemarch, which has been in my mind and is like 800 pages long. So that's really how this came about. In those funny ways that things do. Well, anyway, I am like 185 pages in, and I'm gobbling this up. This is like in the way that Trollope is in his series of provincial life, small town. Everybody knows everybody. There are people refer to each other as Middlemarchers. So Middlemarch is the town, village in this certain part of England. That reminds me of Barchester and the area around Barchester that's in the Trollope series so much. What I love so far about this book, so the subtitle of this book, by the way, it was written in 1871. It was published in 1871. And it says by the time it was published that George Eliot was generally recognized as the greatest living English novelist because Thackeray and Dickens had died in 1863. And what it says here, by the way, the subtitle, getting back to that, is Middlemarch, a study of provincial life. She had written two stories. She had written one story about provincial life, and then she put it down and she started writing another story about Dorothea Brooke, which is one of the main characters, if not the main character. And then talking with her editor, she decided to combine the two. It's so cool. I find myself through these chapters, the provincial life chapters of local politics and who's going to be the chaplain and all of that stuff. Whenever there's a character from the Dorothea Brooke and the women who are of marriageable age in the story, I wonder, like, where does it intersect? Where did she put the connections between the two stories? But anyway, the interesting thing, the curious thing about this book, it starts off talking about a family, two sisters, Dorothea and Celia Brooke, who are orphans and living with their uncle. And Celia is known as the one who is more, I guess, attractive in the way that men would consider attractive then, very feminine Dorothea is headstrong and she wants to learn for the sake of learning. That's not really how women were brought up then, and she will forthrightly get into conversations with men about things that they're talking about, that she has knowledge of. And for the most part, except her uncle sometimes, she's respected in these circles. But she's not considered to be, at first glance, someone that one of these younger men, they're all in their early 20s, would be immediately attracted to, because she's not trying to be this stereotype. So I love Dorothea. I loved her from the beginning. But right away, this right away, that she's going to marry a certain person that is older than her. What's his name? Casaubon. That is not a spoiler. I swear to you, they're talking about it on page 10. Now, you don't know that it's going to happen, but by page 40, you know it's going to happen. What's the rest of this book about? I don't know. Now, where I'm at, has the marriage happened yet? I don't know. I think so. But we haven't gotten back to Dorothea and Casaubon yet. There's a whole bunch of other little subplots. There is a little subplot about a woman named Mary, and there's a young guy named Fred from another family, and these are all lower class people we're talking about now. And Fred is really keen on Mary, but Fred is educated but just doesn't want to work. So he's shooting himself in the foot. Incorrigible in a way. I'm forgetting the one other thing. Lydgate is a doctor, a new doctor, a young doctor, handsome doctor has come to town. And he's got some new ways of doing things, and he wants to bring modern ways of taking care of people to Middlemarch. So that's happening. I will say, if you have this edition, and do you see the blurb? It's pretty short on the back. It's got pretty large writing. Don't read the blurb, because I started reading the blurb. I know nothing about this book. I didn't know Dorothea and Casaubon, but that's fine if you know that part. Because like I said, it happens in the first 30 pages. So you're not going to know, just by knowing that, you're not going to know what happens to them for the rest of the story. You have no way of knowing that. Except this blurb, I started reading after the first sentence, and it starts to go into some things about that marriage and then some other people, just in this short blurb. So don't read the blurb. Just go in as unknowing as possible if you don't want to know. I'm enjoying this because it's unfolding before my eyes. I've never listened to a review about Middlemarch. I've never read anything online about Middlemarch. I read, as I often do, the first page of the introduction, just to get the lay of the land about George Eliot herself. But when I see that it's going into detail about the story, then I stop. So I just read the first couple pages, but I love going back when I'm done and then reading that introduction and getting more juiciness about George Eliot herself. Yeah, so this is my first George Eliot. I think so. So I just thought I would pop in when I'm at this stage. I don't know if I'm going to add this to a reading update that I'm now going to go into, or whether I'm going to make this a vlog and just give you some updates later, maybe for the rest of the book. I don't know. But anyway, this is this update, my very beginner's journey, and I'll keep you posted. Here I am down in the kitchen, getting a very quick cup of coffee, and I wanted to give you an update on some further reading in Middlemarch. So I am up to page 19. The couple, Dorothea and Casaubon, that's his last name, Casaubon, are in Rome for their honeymoon. He's doing a lot of studying at the Vatican though, and they've gone around and seen some things, but now he's gone all day with his studies. And there's I forget what the relation is, but there's a guy who's a relative of Casaubon's, like a cousin or a second cousin. He's a younger guy. Sorry, I hope that's not too loud. He's a younger guy, and his name is Will Ladislaw, and he's an artist type. I think he's got another type of job, but he is artistic, and I think they run into him at some other juncture. But he happens to be in Rome, and he finds out that Casaubon is in Rome, and he sees Dorothea out and about, and I think his friend says, "Oh, that's Mrs. Casaubon," and he was like, "What? She married him? No." Seemed like it was a surprise. He is beguiled by Dorothea. That's interesting. I don't know where that goes or doesn't go. The cool thing about George Eliot's writing is we're starting to just so gently, a bit of a crack in the veneer, I was gonna say, but a fissure in the way that Dorothea is starting to think, I can't, I don't know whether I'm going to be able to be educated by Mr. Casaubon, whose first name I'm forgetting, whether he even wants me to be somewhere near the same level of his education in some areas so that I can be by his side. And he says that I can help transcribe some things or organize notes, but he's just so in his head all the George Eliot says, "We are all of us born in moral stupidity, taking the world as an udder to feed our supreme selves. Dorothea had early begun to emerge from that stupidity." Wow. I don't know. I feel, because this is so deftly done, I do feel like there's a distinct difference between George Eliot here and Pride and Prejudice, Jane Austen. I feel like there's more internal and more of a complex internal experience being expressed. I want to know what other people think. I am not a scholar. If that's not obvious by now, I am not a literary scholar. I haven't done any deep reading into George Eliot versus Jane Austen, and I'm even forgetting when Pride and Prejudice was published. I feel like it's earlier than 1871. So that's where I'm at right now. I would love your thoughts as we go along, especially if you have any scholarly knowledge about all of this. And I'll talk to you later. Hi there. Let me see if I can get this. I'm so low in the screen, but oh well. It's the same day, and it's evening. I've taken Suki for her walk in the yard already, and I have read a little bit more after work, Middlemarch, and I'm up to page 279. So I just started part whatever, called Waiting for Death. I think it's about Casaubon. So what I'm noticing in the sections that I've read since the last time I checked in, or yesterday, I should say, is that I love the mix of people that we're coming across and dipping into in a very full-bodied way. These people that she's bringing into the story that live in Middlemarch are not bit players. They're not there to move the plot forward. These are all separate little plot lines, not just Dorothea and Casaubon. And I'm loving that. And also the other people in this village that we're following are of different professions and different classes. So Dorothea and Mr. Brooke would be considered a little higher class in this world. And then another plot line with Fred Vincy and the Garce are like middle class or lower middle class. They struggle with money, but they're not, I don't think they're people that are like blacksmiths and things. But anyway, so we hear not a side story, but another plot line about Fred Vincy, and he's trying to make his way in life. All of these, not all the characters, but all of the main characters are in their 20s. They're like the millennials of the day, and they have big life choices to make, and they've been given all the advice. It's up to them now to make their own choices, and it's hard. It's really hard. And Fred is one of those people where he's taken exams, he has some education, but he just keeps shooting himself in his own foot, and he gets himself in a pickle. And it's interesting to see how he's getting out of the pickle and how bad he feels, and how he has to go to a family, the Garth family, to help him with some debts. And the daughter of this family is someone who he's been friends with all his life, and he is in love with Mary, one of the daughters, and they're just really close friends, and Mary thinks of him as a close friend. And she's talked to her parents. Her parents have brought up the fact that they really wouldn't want her marrying Fred, and she knows that. She knows he doesn't have his path, his future set out, and she wouldn't marry someone like that. So that's one plot line. And then Fred's sister Rosamond, who I really, really like, is in love with a new doctor in town, Dr. Lydgate. And Lydgate, because he had to come to the house to look at Fred, who got sick, has eyes for Rosamond. We're given to know, but he has said earlier in the book that he's going to wait like 5 years to marry, because he has got plans. He's going to put his practice in place and things like that. Who knows? Dorothea is back from Rome, so they're back at the house, which is called Lowick. And I love this chapter, the way that George Eliot starts off this chapter. Again, we see the presence of George Eliot in this book. One morning, some weeks after her arrival at Lowick, Dorothea, but why always Dorothea? Was her point of view the only possible one with regard to this marriage? I protest against all our interest, all our effort, and understanding being given to the young skins that look blooming in spite of trouble, for these too will get faded, and so on and so on. So she's protesting about her starting off the chapter about Dorothea. Why is she the only one that has a voice in this marriage? I love that. And you know what? There's 2 giant turkeys right through the trees in my neighbor's yard. It looks like a male and a female. I'm gonna see if I can capture that, but they're walking away now. That reminds me, there's probably, I think you can probably hear the sound of gunshots in the background, and that's because there's a state game lands a couple miles up the road, and that's where you can hunt. If some of you outside of the U.S. haven't heard of a state game lands, or even outside of Pennsylvania, I don't know. I think they exist in other states. There's a shooting range there, and on Wednesdays, I think it's the state police that go there and practice. So we hear that gunshot on Wednesday evenings, or the echoes of it, I should say. But turkeys, we have a group of wild turkeys in this neighborhood, and one of the turkeys set up her nest against the front of our house, not this spring but last spring, and we watched her over weeks and weeks and weeks laying eggs. There was like 20 some eggs in the nest, and then she started brooding, and she sat on that nest through sleet and everything else 24 hours a day. And then the nest was attacked by a fox. We saw tail feathers and things in the driveway, but she was fine. The eggs were gone. So I guess what I've heard is that is a very common practice. We had a camera, like a little ring camera thing set up. We called it the Gertie cam, because we had this little camera, and we were able to set it up to watch her come and go. And we caught an image of the fox coming towards the nest. We didn't see all the carnage or attack or anything, thank goodness, but she was fine. We did see her, and there was just feathers in the driveway from the tussle. It was really sad. So anyway, that's where I'm at. So I'm at page 279. I'll probably read, I am going to read more this evening before I go to bed. I'll probably get to, I imagine, page 300, but I'm loving being in this world. I'm loving it. I'm so glad this is a long book and it's 800 pages. because I'm perfectly happy to be in this world for a while. I'm loving it. I'll talk to you later. Thought I'd come on and give an update since I'm further along in Middlemarch before I get ready for work, because I've gotten further along yesterday and today's Friday morning, and it's a really busy day. And then I have to get ready to go away this weekend. And I think I'm taking Middlemarch with me, so I'm using this time to cool off from my workout and try to get my thoughts together about. I am up to page 453, and man, wow, how she weaves together these Middlemarchers' lives and a couple marriages that have happened with the young people. Just fascinating. And the other cool thing about having the story set in Middlemarch, I think George Eliot is a master at this, is that there will be public settings like modern day cafe. I don't exactly know what this place is that they're meeting, but where people that have plot lines of various degrees will run into each other. And then there might be in that public area, whether it's the post office or the grocery or something like that, there will be some of the main characters conversing, and maybe the reader will learn something there. But then maybe there's some of the lesser characters or just the townspeople that aren't part of the plot that are part of this gossip about something. Rosamond marrying the new doctor in town, about Fred Vincy, the guy who can't seem to decide what he wants to do in life. Just really fun. Back to Dorothea and Casaubon. The way that George Eliot uses with the lightest touch, and also the most nuance, how Dorothea's inner experience is now in the marriage and how Casaubon is having his own inner experience. And will they ever share that experience? I don't know. I'm on page 400 something. But because of Casaubon being who he is, that's part of it. Because of Dorothea being who she is, that's part of this breakdown and this silence. Ever so lightly, it's chipping away by degrees. One of the devices that George Eliot uses that I'm loving is this Casaubon's cousin, the young guy, whose name is, is it Ladislaw? Oh, forgetting, but the young guy. And he's the artist, but he wants to have a profession. So unbeknownst to Dorothea's own uncle, who just seems to just really love so many people, has invited this Ladislaw guy to stay in Middlemarch, because he had come to visit, to get a peek at Dorothea, no doubt, but to stay in Middlemarch and maybe work on the new newspaper that he just bought. This has the town in an uproar because, he's an outsider. This is just crushing Casaubon inside because Ladislaw is near the age of Dorothea and Casaubon is much, much older. It's just eating him up to the point where he's starting to get paranoid. It's so nuanced. I just love this writing. It's so complex and yet easy to read, which, that is not an easy feat. I'm gonna grab a toy. Okay, for Tukey, who's very wound up this morning. Yeah, of course you are. Here. So Ladislaw is working at this newspaper. And I marked a page because here's a bunch of people, in one of these public settings talking about this. But this Ladislaw, there again is a vexatious business, said Sir James. We have had him 2 or 3 times to dine at the Hall. You've met him, by the by, as Brooke's guest and a relation of Casaubon's, thinking he was only on a flying visit. And now I find he's in everybody's mouth in Middlemarch as the editor of the Pioneer. There are stories going about him as a quill-driving alien, a foreign emissary and whatnot. Oh my God. There is some foreign blood in Ladislaw. I hope you won't get into extreme opinions and carry Brooke on. People. I feel like I see that in Trollope for sure, but I just feel like this is so on the nose, you know? I just feel like it's that kind of writing, and I'm loving it. So I might take this with me when we go away, but I'm also going to the library, and I will pick some things up at lunchtime today, so I don't know. But anyway, that's where I'm at now, and I'll check in later. I might insert some shots from being away, Virginia. We're back from a long weekend away to a place in West Virginia that is a very well-known climbing area, Seneca Rocks, West Virginia. It's one of our favorite places to go. The weather was perfect and it was fantastic. I would have inserted some clips. And we also rode horses, and we got to meet the people who run this stable. Husband and wife and a grown son all running the stable. We got to meet the foals of all different ages, 3 months, 5 months, 9 months. They gave me the most energetic horse, and it was so much fun. I love horses, horseback riding, taken some lessons, and I really need to do more of that and spend more time with horses. So while we were at Seneca Rocks, it's a very unique place because it doesn't have any cell service, and it has internet or Wi-Fi in some places. If a business has Wi-Fi or if a house has Wi-Fi, then you have Wi-Fi. The house we were staying at did not have Wi-Fi, and it didn't have just regular TVs either. I unexpectedly got a lot of reading time in, like solid reading time in the morning and in the evening. I made huge progress on this book. So I feel like most of my reading was done while I was away in a very concentrated way. And that's really a special type of memory when you're reading big books like this. I am on page 720, and so much has happened. I haven't looked back yet at where I left off in my last clip before this. I can say that I think this is the point where I'm going to start talking about some things that have happened, not in real detail, but this would be considered a spoiler if you intend to read the book and you don't want to hear me talking about a major thing that happens at around in the 500 pages or leading up to 600, something like that, that informs the rest of the book, which I don't know how the rest of the book turns out because I have like another 100 and some pages to go. And I have no idea because things are rolling along and still very much in play. But here's the spoiler part. And then I'll let you know other things I'm talking about after that. Casaubon, the older man, was married to Dorothea. Unsurprisingly, Casaubon develops a heart condition and dies pretty early in their marriage. You might remember me talking about that very artistic cousin of Casaubon's who has this real connection. Maybe it's a sexual energy with Dorothea, although they have never talked about anything like that. They just know this intense energy that's when they're together, and they really enjoy being friends and having this platonic relationship. Casaubon writes in his will a codicil that says if Dorothea should ever marry this guy, Will, that she loses all the land. And of course, land is money. Then it gives those two, well, it gives the whole community who are gossiping about this an idea of what the heck was going on. So it causes all kinds of rippling effects for a while. Will, just to keep his honor and to actually keep Dorothea's honor, is planning on leaving town. Many things happen. Conversations with Will and some other people that reveal Will's mom's past or her parents' past, which has affected someone else's life in town that Will didn't know about. So many threads in that direction. And then Rosamond, who married the new doctor, is a big part of this book. And as things go on in their marriage, the young doctor starting a new hospital with his new medical ways and ideas is really running into financial problems. So his idea of waiting for 5 years to marry was a very good one, because now they have problems. And Rosamond is used to not being wealthy by any means, but always having a certain amount of money, even just, middle class in this society, I would say. So that's putting great strain on the marriage. And how does Rosamond want to solve these problems? How does Dr. Lydgate want to solve these problems? They have very different ideas. How does being put under a lot of duress like this, where your lifestyle is possibly going to drastically change, how does it make you start thinking about your partner and what his or her actions have been? Maybe it starts to color your whole impression of them to begin with. So a lot of that's going on. It's really such a wonderful part of the book, the way that George Eliot is bringing these people to life under real human circumstances. And then the plot line of Fred and Mary, and what are they up to? What's Fred up to? Because Mary's doing fine. What is Fred going to do with his life, and how does that evolve or not evolve? So that's where I'm at now. There's plenty of other plot points that would just be too numerous to go into here, but just know this is like a whole beehive of activity going on, and just so well done, so well orchestrated. It's intensely wonderful, and I'm still enjoying it. Of course, I'm going to slow down now my progress, because I am not concentrating the reading the way that I would have been doing over the long weekend, but I will check in with you later on it. Here I am coming to you for the last time on this vlog, because I finished Middlemarch last night, and my gosh, what an experience this book has been. I went ahead and read the rest of the introduction, because referring back to how introductions will just talk about the entire story. So it gave me some great insight into the story. But the way that the story ended was unexpected to me. I didn't know until the very end what was going to happen. Referring back to Dorothea, who's now a widow, and this attraction with Will Ladislaw, but there's this codicil that prevents her from marrying Will without giving up all of her, not all of her money, but the money from Casaubon and the land. How was that ever going to be overcome? Or did they even have the will to overcome it? There's a scene at the very end of the book between Rosamond, who's married to the young doctor and having great financial problems and great problems with their relationship. There is a scene between her and Dorothea. Dorothea has had conversations with the young doctor about using some of her money to support his new hospital and to raise him out of debt. She doesn't like wealth. Wealth has been a complete restraint for her. It's like a jail, and she was never seeking wealth, especially the wealth that she's gotten since Casaubon has died. And Lydgate is very honest with her about how his relationship with Rosamond has been completely wrecked, and he just has been caught unawares and just doesn't know what to do. And she asks if she can go see Rosamond. That scene between Rosamond and Dorothea is one of the most emotionally intense scenes I have ever read. It is worth the price of the book alone. The deftness, I know I've used that word before, that George Eliot uses for that scene. You could imagine the scene. You could think, oh, well, Dorothy is going to go and talk to Rosamond and try to get her to understand what Lydgate is going through, because Lydgate's got some other problems too that have come up about his reputation, and get her over to their side. But it isn't just that. You would think it would just be that, but with George Eliot, it's not. It's not just that. So it's not just that simple. She makes it even more beautiful and nuanced. So in this introduction, it says that in an article in the Westminster Review in 1856, George Eliot wrote, "The great function of art, including novels, was to widen our sympathies, to amplify experience, and extend our contact with our fellow men beyond the bounds of our own personal lot." And then it says, "We are reminded in a variety of ways, from the comic to the pathetic and the tragic, of our human fellowship with the characters in Middlemarch." There is I guess what's a famous paragraph in Middlemarch, which is using a scientific metaphor about how when you have a piece of polished steel, polished metal, that if you by looking at it, there looks like there's a gazillion random scratches on it. But if you put a candle up to it, the scratches look like they're going in concentric circles where the candle is. And this is her metaphor, the metaphor she uses to say that when you shine a light on someone within the town of Middlemarch, you can see all of the concentric circles around that person and how this person is affecting others and others are affecting him. But if you take the candle away, like, everybody is just a mass of a huge web. I could go on and on. I just wanted to wrap up by saying that this is definitely one of my most enjoyable reading experience so far this year. And I will always remember it. It is a completely different reading experience than, let's say, Tolstoy's War and Peace. And it was much different than Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. This, to me, is my absolute favorite of the two. And I'll definitely be looking forward to other George Eliot books. I have, I think, Silas Marner, and then maybe another one. I can't wait to hear your feedback about George Eliot and Middlemarch and anything else you want to talk about having to do with my reading experience here. And I'm popping into my own video to add, right at the very end, I realized that I didn't describe what kind of book this is to people that may have read other books written around the same time, the mid 1800s to late 1800s. Those of you who haven't read any Jane Austen, Brontes, Trollope, those kinds of books, where does this fall? Well, I feel like, as I think I've mentioned in a couple other clips, that certainly if you've read Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre, and I'm going to say even Wuthering Heights, even though I haven't read Wuthering Heights, but I've read a few chapters of it in the beginning, that if you like that grittiness to the writing, where women are writing about real stuff, it isn't just a romance, who's going to marry who, that sort of thing, but it's a real study of human beings through the lens of the Brontes and of Trollope at the time, which are completely different views, admittedly. But Trollope does this too. So if you've read Trollope, I love the humor and I don't know if this is satire, so I wouldn't go that far, but the humor and the realness and the way that Trollope puts himself in the story as a narrator, love all of that. And I feel like you get that in Middlemarch. If you're a Jane Austen fan, this is a story about the young'uns, the millennials of the time. So there are plenty of marriageable people in this story. I would say that this is not Wuthering Heights, so it may be enjoyable to Jane Austen fans, and that's where I would put it and encourage. Oh, and if you haven't read any of those authors, by the way, I feel like this can be a good starting point, because I think it's a touch of all of those authors combined into one. Hi everyone, sorry, the last part of this video clip is not around. I don't know what happened to it. My ever expanding video editing skills. So I'll just leave it here by saying thank you so much for joining me on this vlog and my journey through Middlemarch. I can't wait to read all of your comments and feedback. So thanks again. Bye.